Today, we're going to be talking about how to set up your Monstera like a pro. And if you're lucky, it might even produce fruit like this in the years to come. Firstly, you need to understand the basic anatomy of the Monstera. You have the leaf, the petiole, and then the stem. And then these bits that shoot out the back are called aerial roots. The front of the plant is where the petioles come out of, and then the back of the plant is where the aerial roots come from. Then you want to face the front of your plant towards your biggest light source so that all of the leaves come out of the front and all of the aerial roots grow out of the back. In its natural environment, the Monstera would typically climb up a tree or something strong enough to support its weight. But obviously in our homes we need to provide some sort of support so that it can put out nice big leaves. The main types of support can be divided into two categories. Category number one is where your support becomes an extension of your pot. The most common example of this is moss poles. You can either make your own or buy them pre-made. And if you keep the moss constantly moist, it will have some added growth benefits. The main benefits are improved growth because the aerial roots will grow directly into the moss, which will mean your Monstera can take up more nutrients and water. Finally, as the plant is actually rooted into the pole, it makes propagation easy and means the plant is well supported. There are a few cons to be aware of when it comes to moss poles. Firstly, moss poles require some added maintenance because the moss inside the pole has a tendency to dry out faster than the soil, so you'll probably find yourself watering more often with a moss pole. Secondly, they are more expensive to buy. Even if you make your own moss pole, the moss inside the pole is quite expensive. Lastly, it is difficult to change your support when using a moss pole because it roots directly into the pole. So just make sure you're choosing a support that you'd be happy using in the future. Category number two is basically anything else that you can use to support the plant. So this could be a plank of wood, some bamboo, a trellis you could use, and then another good one is a broom handle. And then obviously you've got your coconut fibre pole, not to be confused with a moss pole. So the main benefits of these types of support is that they're obviously readily available, they're more affordable, and they're easy to switch out. The downside is that these types of support retain little to no water or nutrients, so it is purely acting as support and it isn't able to provide the plant with any of those extra growth benefits. The decision is down to your preference. Both options are perfectly fine. The main thing is that you provide some form of support so that your plant doesn't fall over or go crawling along the floor. I have 6 Monsteras here which I rescued from a charity shop and they need to be properly repotted. You might find that you have multiple Monsteras in one pot. This is fine as long as you make sure they're all facing the same direction. Today I'm going to pick one and provide it with some support. Once you have your support, you want to bury it as deep as possible so that it is nice and secure. It is easier to do this when repotting. Then you tie the back of the stem where the aerial roots come out of up against your support. Just make sure you're tying the stem and not the petiole. I use gardener's Velcro. I find this easiest to use and it reduces the risk of scarring the plant. Once you fill the pot up with soil, it's all set up. Just make sure you keep an eye on the stem so that it continues to grow up your support. And as for the aerial roots, simply direct them back into the soil or your moss pole so they can provide your plant with more nutrients. And that is how you support your Monstera. The same principles apply for the types of support I mentioned earlier. This neglected Monstera will go on to see better days. For the soil, you want a chunky, well draining soil mix so that any excess water can drain through. you can either make your own or buy the soil pre-mixed. I use the Monstera and Philodendron Blend from Soil Ninja because it's easy and I know the mix is always going to be on point. If this is the route you want to go down, I've dropped a 10% discount code in the description below. Alternatively, you can always make your own mix, and I have also dropped my recipe in the description below. Okay, so now you have your Monstera set up, you want to make sure it's getting enough light. Monsteras can survive low light, but it can cause leggy growth and smaller leaves. So if you want your Monstera to thrive, place it somewhere that gets lots of bright indirect light. Essentially, the more bright indirect light that it gets, the faster it will grow. I also wouldn't be afraid of some direct light. So long you're gradually introducing your Monstera to more light, it should be able to handle it. And that is how you set up your Monstera like a pro. If you want to see me try the precious Monstera fruit, click here. And thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day.